about this courtesy. Normally I like to stand up when I'm asked a question. It goes back to being a little boy at school at the age of 6, when that was expected in my class. I don't think it's like that these days. My name is Nicholas True. I know many of you, and many of you may well know me, as I've lived in Sheen for nearly 35 years. But I'm here as leader of the council, and we on Richmond Council believe very much that people need to be more directly involved and have opportunities to be more directly involved in having a say about their futures, about their community. I hate the way that modern politics has become people throwing out press releases, criticising other people who throw out press releases and emails and sound bites, and everything goes round and round in a little Westminster village far away. And no wonder that the general cynicism about politics grows, because communities build up from the ground. And we won't all agree with each other. Many of the things that will be said this evening, other people will disagree with. But unless we actually talk to each other, and the people who are the hired hands, that's us, the politicians, we're just people you hired for a year or two to do a job. Unless we come and meet our fellow members of our community and speak, then politics becomes a kind of game far away instead of a public service, which is what it's about. So that's really why we're here. But we're also here because one of the things our council wants to do is to really give communities more defence against the very powerful external forces that affect communities, not least in the area of planning. And there is a process here which we call village planning, which isn't only about planning, which this is part of. Just leave this question time, as it's called. But there will be other stages. There'll be online consultation, there'll be drop-ins, there'll be walkabouts. And the idea at the end of this process is that we will have, well actually we did have a few years ago, a village plan for East Sheen, which represents the hopes and wishes and aspirations of local people, made up by us. I can say us in my case because I'm a Sheen person. At this occasion, the only occasion I can say that, but made up by us for our community. And the aim is that if we get a village plan agreed, that this will then be adopted and become part of the local plan. And will give, in planning, will give the planning committee more authority to take decisions, and more when the inspector comes to have a look at matters concerning local character and so on, they will have to show more respect because it will be embedded in the plan. But the village planning process will include many other things and what you feel about the community. But I don't want to take any more time. This isn't, I must say, an intelligence test or a brains trust. I mean, this is, I hope, a conversation. And as I often say at these meetings, you probably wouldn't get a group of politicians if you wanted to have a brains trust in the first place. We're here to listen and answer as best we can. We don't pretend to know all the answers. You will know far more about your aspects of your community than most of us ever will. So we're here to listen, and everything you say, I must say, will be filmed and will be recorded and noted. So it won't just vanish into thin air. It will be something on which we have to act. Now on the panel with me I have Paul Hodgins on my left, who is responsible for schools, and he's pining a bit because no question appears to have been put in yet on schools. I should say we have nothing to do with the questions or the selection of questions, that is done by others. Stephen Speak, who is responsible for roads, highways, transport, cycling, will answer questions on that. esteemed Chairman Anthony Colan, local resident and mess member who can say what he likes about himself. I'll say he's a good man. I have to say that because he lives not far from me, so otherwise I'd be in trouble. I'll hand over to him in a second. Then we have Pamela Fleming, who is Cabinet Member for Environment, Business and Community, which is a sort of all-purpose thing. I always apologise for this Cabinet Member thing. We're not people with fully grandeur. This is a title that's imposed by law, by the Tony Blair government, actually, believe it or not. The people who have these responsibilities have to be called Cabinet Members. I find it faintly amusing. Though they're worthy Cabinet Members. And at the end we have Susan Chappell, who's responsible for the voluntary sector and planning. So between us, I will shut up now until required to answer a question. Just to thank you all for coming. It's a wonderful turnout, and I hope this will be part of a process that comes to mean something to all of us. And I hope it will go on for the future, long after perhaps that this council and future councils and being. So let's hand over to our chairman and get the question time underway. And I do most honestly and sincerely want to thank so many of you for giving the time and trouble to show how much you care and love for this wonderful community here in Sheen. Thank you very much.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and again, thank you very much for coming. And thank you, Nick, for your introduction. Hopefully you can all hear me okay, because I'm very unexperienced when it comes to speaking before a microphone. First of all, can I say welcome to the Borough's 6th Leaders Question Time event tonight. I'm just going to be giving you a very short introduction to basically some of the housekeeping rules that we'll be trying to follow tonight, if I can. My name is Anthony Colan. I've lived in Sheen for the last 30 years, and I've very much enjoyed living in this wonderful part of West London. I'm trying as best I possibly can to be an independent chair, and hopefully you will feel that I will have lived up to that promise, hoping to try and field the questions and ensure that the event in fact proceeds in a timely manner. Can I point out just some of the other basic housekeeping? The fire exits, I'm duty bound to tell you, are as you came in through the door there, over to my left over there, and through this archway here. I'm sure many of you are members of this church, in fact know a lot more about the exits than I do, but those are the ones that I've been informed about. Shortly I will come to the first question, but first I want to run down how the event will work. For the first 1 hour, the panel will respond to the pre-submitted questions, which the panel obviously are aware of. All of those who are asking a question should have been given a copy of their question when they arrived, and they are to submit it exactly as per that wording. I will invite each councillor to ask and respond, in fact, to the question, in fact, that has been directed to them. The panel will then respond. The questioner will then have the opportunity to ask a supplementary question. Each question has basically a 10-minute allocation to ensure we try and cover all the issues. And should there be time, we will open the floor to any other questions regarding the same issue. When we've asked the questions, we will have 1 hour open to the floor to respond to any other issues that haven't already been addressed. Finally, can I point out that because this event is being televised, not national,
Probably better than what's on.
maybe this might be coming on in 2 hours' time. But please can all the speakers use the microphone, which Andrew in fact will be roaming around with, so that all the questions are clearly heard before the councillors in fact submit their responses. So, without further ado, can I kick off by asking Helen McGuire to submit the first question, please? Helen Moore. Is Helen here? Well, fortunately, in fact, I was warned by Andrew here that if the person wasn't here, that I would in fact then read out a question myself for the panel. So the first question is, what has been done to tackle the lack of enforcing the dog fouling signs? After receiving information from the Freedom of Information Act, virtually nothing has been done to tackle dog fouling. What has also been done to proactively deal with graffiti? And what has been done about Viola not doing the job they're paid to do, e.g. picking up the litter they drop on collection? I'll ask Councillor Fleming to answer.
Thank you very much indeed. I hope you can hear me if I lean forward. Firstly, on dog fouling, we do take this extremely seriously, and it's very difficult. I'm a dog owner myself, but it is actually very difficult to enforce because you never catch anybody in the act, or their dog in the act. We do we did some work, a lot of work in barns. We got children to use posters. So, if you like, it's educational. We really do try to tell people where the bins are, baggage and bins, and we proactively do this all the time. And of course, we would enforce, if we could catch somebody. Just recently, we've had particular issues in Palewell Park drawn to our attention. And our head of parks has put in increased enforcement there. So I hope the situation may be improving, but I will ask him to let me know about that. On graffiti, really important. I mean, once you get a bit of graffiti, it will attract more. So it's so important to get it cleared immediately. You can report it if you see it, either to our contact centre. There's a wonderful app you can put on your phones or iPads called Love Clean Streets. You can tell your local councillor, and we have this system called Members Express we put it on. And our enforcement teams are really good about going around and cleaning it up quickly. It is more difficult when it's on another building, but again, or somewhere that the council doesn't own. But again, we do help them get it cleared off. The only problem we have, I have to say, is with Network Rail. We don't like letting us on our land, and I've got one back to my own ward, South Richmond, just along passage to the station at the moment, that's been there for a while. But it's hugely important to get this cleared as soon as possible, and we do it. Veolia. Well, I mean, this is a problem. They do have the refuse and recycling collectors. They do have brushes, and they are supposed to clear up after them. In many cases, I know they do. In fact, we do get compliments and I've seen it myself actually in my own road, where people are a bit careless about their bins and what they put in, or their bags. They get left over by foxes, and Veolia do go around and clean this up. But if there are particular roads or any that you feel this isn't happening, if you again let the councillor know, the contact centre know, the council, we will look into it.
Are there any supplementary questions or anything else that they would like to ask Councillor Fleming? You can just wait for the microphone to come.
You talk about advising our councillors. Are they here tonight?
Yes, I'm chairing the meeting.
I know you are.
Councillor Marcel.
Sorry, I yes. Just to know who the current councillors are.
Hi, I'm Councillor Marcel, Brown Marcel. I live in Sheen Lane, and just so you can all see me, and all my contact details on the Richmond website.
Hello, I'm Hanson Thompson, newly elected, so looking forward to serving the issue.
Yes, I'm sorry, perhaps I should have introduced the councillors. It's actually meant to be a panel of the council rather than local councillors, but fair enough, I apologise if I did not do that. I'm very glad, of course, that they're here.
Okay, are there any other questions?
the people who clean the streets and do the rubbish do an extremely good job. But I thought the owner had been sacked, and it is now somebody else.
No, the earlier still have contracts been split. The earlier still do part of the contract, and Continental Landscapes do part of it as well. You know, some of the street cleaning and they look after the path. But the earlier are still there doing refuse and recycling. Correct.
Yes, the Continental Landscape people have just about started the task, or they have already started the task of obviously doing the autumn leaf collection, for example. So that there are two firms working. I mean, graffiti, I would just like to say myself, I absolutely detest graffiti, and it's one of those things that one thing leads to another. So I do appeal to anybody who sees a piece of graffiti, do please, as has been suggested, do report it. It won't necessarily be removed like within an hour. They will give priority actually if it's grotesquely offensive, as some men some are, but it will get removed. We do take it very seriously. I have been trying for some time to interest Network Rail in doing a little bit better, put it mildly. It seems to me that with the amount of unemployment there is in this country, it would be a wonderful opportunity, and I mentioned this in the first speech I ever made in Parliament, to create a social enterprise of young people actually to get together to clean up graffiti and clean up along the railways, to prove it could be done. And then, given the amount of the scale of the problem nationally, it could be a business that might become self-financing. But we come up time and time again against the Network Rail's concern about letting people onto their property for safety reasons. Though some of the perpetrators seem to be all over it all the time, as far as I can see. But it's certainly an issue we take very seriously, and we are nudging, we will keep fighting with Network Rail.
Are there any further questions on this subject? Andrew?
I just want to comment that I did have a complaint from a resident about graffiti on the rail building in Southwell Walkway. And we did get Network Rail to clean it up. It had said something about the police being picked. And when it had been cleared up, the same people came along and put graffiti up there saying, "I'll be back." So now we've got to clear it up again.
So this is a comment or question. I'll answer this first hour with the direct questions, which you can talk about, but you know, it's not a question.
The questions are down, the questions will be answered. I was directing an answer on graffiti, and the gentleman, Councillor Marcel, added something. We are here to answer questions, and I hope the Chairman receives plenty of time to answer. Would you like to answer a question? Ask a question now, sir?
Would you like to ask a question?
No, first part that was a written question, not soft questions. Come up. I just think we need to get through the questions to see what the question will be. Any others?
Well, for the first hour, we are going to be answering that pre-submitted questions.
How many pre-submitted questions are there?
There are 9.
Right. So how many?
We've got 10 minutes left on each question, and then we'll then throw it out to the floor.
Sorry, if I may plead, I don't hope we're not going to make this an adversarial issue. I mean, the written questions cover a whole manner of subjects. The open supplementaries, anybody in the hall can come in and ask a supplementary on those questions when they're on the floor. Then after that, there is a whole amount of time for questions on subjects that have not been covered in the first hour. We're not here to evade questions. We've actually come here to answer questions. And I'd really rather like to hope that we might get on with some of the questions. Please, sir, if you want to ask a question, no one is stopping doing so. I wish that, can we?
I think I would like to move on to the next question. So, can we have question 2, which is going to be submitted
Evening.
Good evening.
My question has to do with commercial properties, and the question comes from both my husband and I, but unfortunately he's travelling for business today and sends his regrets. The question is that my husband and I, we moved to Sheen about a year ago, and in the intervening period we've noticed considerable turnover in a lot of commercial properties, particularly we've noticed the proliferation of estate agencies opening. Particularly at the intersection of Sheen Lane and the Upper Richmond Road. I think 3 of the 4 corners are now occupied by estate agents. What our concern is that the rental rates in the area have become unsustainable for small independent businesses to survive, let alone grow in any appreciable manner. My question then directly is how will the council address this issue in order to ensure the continued presence of independent shops on Sheen Lane and the Upper Richmond Road?
Thank you for your question, and Councillor Fleming will answer again.
Yes, thank you. And it is a hugely important question because high streets and independent businesses are at the heart of this priority for this council. So far as Sheen is concerned, first I would just sort of say that there is a slight drop actually. I looked up the figures in empty properties from last year. I mean, it's a small drop, and as a borough, we do actually quite well as far as empty properties is concerned. We protect our key shop frontage with planning policies, and we do this quite rigorously. But it is actually harder when it becomes change of use when it's not key, when it's secondary shopping frontage. So it is actually harder than that. But I agree we need to be more rigorous about. We can be more rigorous about that. Unfortunately, we're not helped by central government, and at the moment they do have proposals that would sort of create a joint A1, A2 use, which would allow any shop, key shop, to be changed into an estate agent or a financial services rather than a payment. So we have obviously resisted that. You mentioned high rentals. Of course, we don't have any control. These are over rents. This is a matter of so many properties are in the hands of investors and investment portfolios, and so it does make it difficult. We do hold regular meetings with commercial agents to try to see what we can do to work with them on the letting of properties. We have a town centre opportunities fund, and every one of our small village centres gets some kind of assistance, which they use in various ways. Of course, parking, so that we try to sustain, bring customers into the area. We have introduced the Richmond Park with 30 minutes free parking, and I will waive this, that we, as well as that, businesses can put offers now so that people can access these offers that businesses have, so we're promoting them on our website, and that's open to employees and visitors to Richmond as well. And we help with Christmas lights. So there's a lot of things that we do to try to make high streets themselves and properties sustainable. But it is, I agree, very, very difficult to do anything about rents and, of course, high business rates. But from the council's point of view, we're always there working with the business and the traders association to do everything we can. And I'd be happy to talk to you if you've got any ideas, and I'm happy to talk to you afterwards as well.
Kate, would you like to ask another further question in response?
No, I understand your point about having very little control over rent. I suppose where this question initially came from is one particular business that's recently closed was a business we walked by every day. It was almost always full. So what our concern is, when a business is full, it has customers coming, it has customers staying, it has a regular clientele and still can't make a go of it, then that's why we start to wonder what else possibly could be done in terms of working with owners who are setting these rents, in terms of meeting with them. Surely it's better to have some rent coming in than nothing, rather than charging through the nose that businesses can't survive. So I hope to see some sort of initiative in that regard, and when a business is full and still not succeeding, there's a bigger problem.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other questions to ask on this subject? two over there.
Could you supplement that by speaking about uninhabited residential properties? My question is prompted by the fact that we have a house near us that's been empty for at least 10 to 15 years. So what is the council's policy on that, and how big a problem is it in Richmond or in the borough?
Obviously there are often reasons why property is left empty for a long time, if some of them are reasonable reasons, but if there is a property which is empty and is dilapidated and is causing damage in the area, we have actually revived a policy of being prepared to use compulsory purchase to take those properties. In fact, I believe we had 2 properties up for consideration at the last so-called cabinet meeting, and hey presto, the owners of the 2 properties suddenly appeared after having been very hard to find. And I think one of them is now proceeding to sell the property, the other we're not quite sure what's happening. It's a lengthy and quite costly process, and it's not entered into lightly because it is a lot of law around it. But it is something we have decided we are prepared to do in extremis. So if there is a very serious case that you have in mind, I mean, please leave the address with the officers or with us afterwards, or get in touch and we'll have to investigate it. But I can't promise that we're not going to go around sort of knocking on the door of every house that looks to be empty, and I don't think the public would expect that, in many circumstances. But the circumstances you describe are ones with...
Is there a time limit?
Sorry?
Sorry. Is there a time limit? I mean, as I say, the house I'm talking about, it's at least 10 years, if not more.
It would be exercised in a matter of judgment. I mean, time would be one of the factors that would be taken into account, but it might well be that an absentee owner could be away working for 10 years and has made great arrangements in order to keep the property up and keep it in good state. Now, you are indicating obviously that's not the case in this case, but I'm just illustrating why time can't be the only factor. If it's a right old mess, it's probably one of the major factors.
If I just follow this up, do you have any idea how many empty properties there are in the borough?
I personally don't know. I mean, we will know, absolutely will know that figure, because it will become evident from the council tax register. But I'm not the sort of person that makes up figures off the top of their head to look as if I know everything. At the moment, we can look that figure up and again we can supply you with the answer.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Can we move on to question 3, please, which is going to be submitted by Gina Ingram.
Good evening. The question is, what, if anything, can the council do to ease the problems caused by a combination of narrow roads with pinch points, curbside parking, heavy goods vehicles in the area defined by Sheen Lane, Christchurch Road, Sheen Common Drive and Upper Richmond Road? I'm sure others here would have a similar question. This is just because I know the locality. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and Councillor Speak will now respond to that.
I'm sort of guessing here that your issue is really about congestion, ultimately, that it's congestion in the area caused by the narrow roads, caused by cars parked on each side, and possibly caused by these large vehicles. There's obviously not a lot that we can do about the geography of the road layout, so we're kind of stuck with that. The curbside parking, and again, that's something that the residents tend to appreciate. It is obviously possible, as we have done in other places, to introduce controlled parking zones, and from that point of view, get a better control over what's happening on the parking side. And then in terms of the heavy goods vehicles, I mean, obviously Richmond Park is closed to heavy goods vehicles, so if there are large vehicles in that area that you define as Christchurch, Sheen, Common Drive and the Upper Richmond Road, then I tend to think that they're probably using that or accessing the residences in the area in order to make deliveries. It's an unknown. If you've got sort of specific issues in terms of specific people who are using it as a rat run or something like that, then I need a bit more information. But in terms of that sort of generalised, what can we do about it? It's difficult, I think, for the council to do an awful lot there on those specific issues.
If I could add, I mean, if there is curbside parking that's not allowed and not wanted and is obstructive, we can deal with that. And the council's mobile, there is a man on a motorbike who can be asked to come along and deal with the matter, just as if somebody parks across the drive without permission, they can all park across the dropped curb by a corner, which we put in there to help disabled people. Someone parks across those. There is a fast intervention man on a motorbike who can come along. There's a letter of a number of the council to do that. The trouble is that some of our little roads are very small. I mean, look at Stanley Road, which, for example, which is near one of the roads in the area you described. It's incredible that not so long ago was a coach company operating in that part of Sheen. But we have just become more and more car owning. People have to be considerate. Obviously, slightly changed the alignment of traffic through up Derby Road in recent years, although that's difficult chicane still. There are problems we constantly keep under review, but at the end of the day, people have cars, they will go somewhere. But parking has to be considerate, and we will support residents who want parking to be considerate. In as long as it's what is complained of is a breach of the law.
There is one more point I was going to make, actually, that in terms of the size of delivery vehicles, I mean, we're conscious of the fact that some of the roads are not appropriate for the size of vehicles that people try to use. So it is something that Council Fleming, myself and the officers will be trying to look at in terms of a way that we can control the size of vehicles in conjunction with the community. So watch this space.
And this is indeed something in the village planning process. If there are roads which are of particular concern, which you think either might need special attention, or some roads actually, of course, ask for curbside parking, particularly on the railway side of the Upper Richmond Road. These are all issues which this process of village planning will enable us to address, I hope, as a community, discuss some of the issues that arise.
Okay, just wait for the mic to come over.
I did submit a question and it relates to this issue. I don't know if it's coming up later, but it seems relevant to this. It's about what I asked is what can be done to improve the traffic situation in Sheen Lane between Sheen Gate and the Upper Richmond Road, please. In the last couple of years, our road, which was previously only busy when the parents were taking children to and from Tower House School, deteriorated into a rat run. I don't know whether the question is going to be raised or not, so I'll just continue. Through the morning rush hour and for most of the day, putting the curves all through the day, speeding drivers try to negotiate the narrow road where strict and builders' vehicles are increasingly causing blockages. Can something be done to stop commuters using Sheen Lane as a shortcut from Kingston and Ham? On the road next to Putney Swimming Baths, there is a traffic barrier which I understand is in use at certain hours of the day, to prevent drivers using the surrounding residential streets as a cut-through. Could a similar barrier be used, for example, at Sheen Cross in Richmond Park during peak commuter hours? And then I've just added about parking. The parking situation in Sheen Lane has deteriorated. Having previously been opposed to the information of residents parking at the last consultation, I now feel that this is becoming residents want to look out onto some greenery or onto their next door neighbour's 4x4.
Well, thank you very much. That, funny enough, was question 8 by Rosemary Brown, so suddenly jumped.
Sorry.
Don't worry, no problem at all. It's all in the same area, and I'll ask Councillor Speaker to respond. Thank you.
Well, certainly Richmond Park is used by a lot of commuters, and that's a factor in the peak periods. And the one thing I'd have to say, though, is that installing a barrier at Sheen Cross, and that's within the park, that's not something the council has any power over. I very much doubt, I have to say, I very much doubt that the Royal Parks would want to do something like that. Obviously, if we were to restrict exit through Sheen Gate, then the traffic would be going somewhere else, so the issues with that. We don't have, I mean, you asked in there about introducing CPZ, I think, in Sheen Lane. Obviously, there was a consultation done last year, I think it was. The actual implementation of that is not completely finalised, so I'd have to say that there is no way that we want to be going back to do another consultation now. It costs tens of thousands of pounds, so I would have to say that it's too soon, I think, to start sort of considering reconsulting on the CPZ in that area. What else did you ask? The skips and builders, I think, was an issue. I mean, that is a temporary phenomenon. I think that's the nice thing about it, is that once the building works are done, the skips disappear. It is a product at the moment of the economy, and in fact, people are redeveloping their houses, so it is a problem definitely at the moment, but it is one that I would expect to disappear over some time, or at least alleviate for some time.
Can I, sorry, I should perhaps, because it so happens I'm also a member of the Royal Parks Board, so I'm in a position to start microphones humming on this question. The Royal Parks will not be looking at putting any blockage or closure in the park. Some years ago, some of you will remember that actually the Royal Parks, before I was on the board, did propose closing Sheen Gate to traffic, which in one sense would have been the perfect solution to your concern. I have to say that it was the biggest riot I've ever seen in Sheen in the time I've lived here, a meeting in Sheen Lane Centre. You couldn't get all the people into Sheen Lane Centre, the people who were angry and protesting about this proposal. Because it would cut people off from their friends and their schools and their hospitals, and the Kingston Hospital and so on. I mean, literally, I think there were 700 people at the public meeting angry about it. So I don't think Royal Parks is going to want to go back there. The Royal Parks is concerned about, I don't want to spend too much time saying what Royal Parks is about Richmond Council. We are aware that there's a long distance commuter problem, and long distance commuter problem can be dealt with perhaps differently from a local commuter problem. I think the people who are going to schools or to Kingston Hospital need to be treated differently from people who may be driving in from Guildford or Surrey. And some people are beginning to look at whether there might be ways of identifying cars which are local traffic and those which come further afield, so we can reduce the commuter flow. It's very much at an early stage, and certainly for those who I personally wouldn't support the closure of Sheen Gate. I wouldn't want to alarm them, but I think that idea is going to be put forward again. The parks are aware of the parks, and obviously with our duty to protect the parks, we are concerned about a consistent long-distance commuting. One other very brief thing on skips. Skips raise money for the council, but they should be legal. They should be lit, they should be licensed, people shouldn't dump building materials in the road. And if you see builders abusing these things, then it's reasonable, I think, for somebody to have a skip to get rid of a load of rubble that they've taken out their house when they're doing it. But if there is is abuse and malpractice by builders, we can come down on them if they're not licensed and if they're not paying the law. So again, do inform the council if there's somebody with the skip who's not paying properly.
Okay, thank you, Nick. So can we revert back to question 4, which is going to be submitted by Gordon Williamson, please.
In the summer, there were plans put up for a woodland playground in Sheen Common. I thought they were excellent and I fully supported them, but I gather some residents expressed concerns, and it will not now go ahead with the plans as submitted. My question is that the end of the matter, or are the plans being reworked to meet the concerns of everyone?
Did everyone hear that question? Okay. Can I ask Councillor Fleming to respond, please?
Yeah, thank you very much indeed for that. And look, I mean, you're quite right. Whilst there was, strong support, there were also quite a number of concerns raised, because of course it is a very quite a unique natural area, Sheen Common. However, I am very conscious of the fact that we do realise that there is, the children do need some sort of play space as well. So, mind you, there's plenty of play space in Sheen Common for children, natural play space. But I did actually walk the area, the area which was proposed, with our parks, one of our parks officers and our ecology officer a couple of weeks ago, just to see what we might be able to do that would perhaps, similar but would complement the natural beauty of the area a little better. And so it's there, and we will be looking at it again, because I understand the concern that people have about having some kind of play facilities for children in the area. So it hasn't totally gone away. No.
Can I just make a supplementary?
Sure.
A lot of I don't see redbacks, but a lot of the woodland part has actually got trees which I describe as weeds of the forest. I'm thinking here of holly and bramble, goodness knows what. So I'm sure there should be an area that can be found which doesn't cut down beautiful trees. So I'm just sad that it doesn't look like it's going to go ahead very quickly.
No, and in fact that's an absolute point. That was why the ecology officer came when we had a look at it. And there are some spaces, but it's just having a further look at it. So yes, we'll certainly be continuing. You're quite right, and we don't want to lose trees, and there are certain ways of looking at this. So we'll be I hope coming up with a few ideas on it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Can we proceed to question 5, which is being submitted by Anne Matthews?
Yes?
We have been promised an upgrade of Milestone Green for quite a number of years now. What are the plans for the improvement and upgrading of the area?
Okay, thank you very much, and Councillor Speed will respond.
Milestone Green is, of course, part of the red route, or at least it's surrounded by red lines, which means that it's responsibility of TfL. And on that basis, we're sort of beholden to them and what they want to do. But we've been in touch with them, and they have a plan, so they say, to improve the street scene from that point along to Clifford Avenue. So there is an idea that they're going to do something there. Milestone Green is obviously going to be a key part of that. Hopefully, and I'll say hopefully, there will be plans developed in the course of the next few months, and there will be an implementation during the next financial year. But one of the things that I'm very keen to do is to collect before we go any further is to collect ideas. So if people do have specific ideas, then I'd be very interested in hearing them so that we can put those to TfL. I'm conscious of the fact that, for example, there's the cut through going up to Sheen Lane, and if one could pave a little bit more of that, then perhaps Marsden Green could be linked to industrial shops. So there are things that we could do, and as I say, I'd be very interested in hearing the views of the community so that we can try and work with TfL to get something that the community would like.
May I just ask? You just wait for the microphone. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Milestone Green, the cut-off that you spoke about, am I correct in saying that you're really not supposed to be turning left if you're driving west into that cut-off?
That's absolutely right. It's an illegal manoeuvre.
Everybody does it.
Everybody does it, and it's very dangerous. You might be relieved to know that I was nearly knocked over there by somebody just sweeping round about 2 or 3 years ago. And I know many other people who've had similar experiences. It is people access, they have a right to access it for parking and unloading and so on. But it's not a correct term. Actually, historically, if you look at the old paintings and drawings of Milestone Green, the interesting thing is it was a green. I have a lovely picture in my office in the council which has the milestone there and some fences and some green and a bit of a tree. But actually there always was a road there. So it was a triangle even before everybody with the South Circular Road was ever thought of. So there is a residual right of way there which would raise some questions. But in terms of road use, it's an illegal term, and I have at times asked that it be enforced, though it is very, very rarely enforced. I think as Stephen says, now we've got TfL interested in potentially putting some money forward. We've had a long history of, your local councillors, people in the local community, the Mortlake Sheen Society, we've all been putting forward ideas and thoughts about how that green could be improved. So it's very important that in this village planning process that we collect these community ideas. We don't want some TfL designer, I don't want to be snobby, but from up in City Hall somewhere, way out in that Girton or whatever it is, suddenly telling us what we should have in our local Milestone Green. I hope that we will have some clear say on how it should be decorated and set out if it is to be changed. And I'm sure the council would be prepared to consider making a contribution, if you like, to upgrade from if we're being fobbed off with substandard equipment. So let's have a conversation on it. I think it's a very good question from Anne Matthews, and she's right to say that the matter's been under consideration a long time.
Okay, thank you. Can we move on then to question 6, which is going to be submitted by Nikki Gill.
There is an ever-increasing problem with damage to pavements left by developers when properties have been renovated. What can the council do to avoid the repair bill having to be met by the taxpayers?
I shall ask Councillor Speak to respond on that one.
We do actually have a practice of trying to make sure that people who damage the pavements pay for it, but the problem is the burden of proof who actually caused the damage. And with the big developments, it's relatively simple for us to go take photographs of the state of the road, agree the statement of condition with the developer, and if there is damage when they conclude the work, then we know when it was caused and we can charge them for it, and that does happen. The problem, of course, is with smaller developments and household developments where your skip gets dumped in the driveway and causes the cracking of the pavement. And in instances like that, the council isn't informed, so the council doesn't necessarily have those pictures that can prove that the damage has been caused by them and not by, for the sake of argument, somebody reversing on the road and therefore by 4 and has crushed the stone. So it's the burden of proof that makes it very difficult to enforce this. But One of the things that we are discussing, it's in very early stages, we have to understand whether it's even going to be practical, but it is perhaps collecting a deposit from people when planning permission is granted. We can call it a sort of highways renewal deposit or something like that. And then if there is damage caused, we take the deposit from them, and in order to get it back, they will have to ask us to come and take photographs, and therefore we will have that ability to show the evidence to show when damage was caused to the roads. But I don't know if it's going to be feasible. It's an idea discussion.
Could I just say that a simple way would be just when a planning application is submitted, the photograph has to be submitted at the same time, and then when it's finished, they have to send another photograph in, or somebody from the council just goes and does it. It's very simple. I've been trying to follow up one particular address for over 2 years now, and in fact, the whole of the pavement is completely cracked, and it's been so long now, there are weeds growing up between all the pavement stones, but there are a good 10, 12, 15 paving stones completely damaged. And why can't the council make sure that the household repairs that pavement? Because in the end, the council will have to do it.
Agreed, in the end, the council will have to do it if we cannot get that proof. But I think that's a great idea. I think that photograph and submission, and the principle being the same as I was trying to talk about, but the easy items.
Yes, good. On the same subject.
We recently, I live in Sheen Drive, we recently had some work done with the Planning Commission. And someone from the council came and took a photograph of our driveway. We have a driveway off the road in advance, before to record precisely the condition of the driveway. And he said, if there's any damage, you will pay for it, which seems to me entirely reasonable. So somebody's already doing what you're suggesting they might do, and I'm surprised to hear that you perhaps don't know that.
No, what I actually said was that is what we do if we're talking about it. And then what I said is the smaller developments, the sort of household developments, that's where we're not necessarily told the work has started. So we can't send people out to take photographs. If we're told about it, we do take those photographs.
So you take photographs where the planning application may have been given and the work's about to start?
Yes.
Yes, because, there is one house, and maybe the same house that Nicky Gillis is talking about, where there's outrageous damage. They have an in and an out. There's outrageous damage to the paving stones. It's quite clearly it's done when this house was completely refurbished. 2 years later, it looks a terrible mess.
Yeah, I strongly agree with what Steve said. I personally think that I would like us to go to the extent of saying when you file an application with an intention of actually taking material across, there are pavements actually, they belong to us, not to the people who are doing the work. I don't want to say us, I don't mean the council, I mean us. We are looking at, as Stephen said, the idea of extending this. At the moment it's a little bit where it's something major or something significant is expected to be happening across the pavement. Photographs are sometimes taken, but it is a bit like Pooh Bear, Piglet say, was it Piglet or Pooh that said sometimes they do and sometimes they don't, Piglet. But I think we probably should have a system where we want to see if we can, because the big planning people up at the top don't necessarily like these kind of things. It seems to be logical if you ask people to file drawings, why not file a digital photograph as well? So I agree, so the thrust of your remark. The proof will still be an issue potentially, because the artful person might say, well, I've got an unfriendly neighbour who came along with a sledgehammer in the night and broke it up. But I think most people would accept as a fair cop on the basis of 2 photographs and not think that it is on it.
Okay, thank you. The lady had her hand up.
I was thinking, when it's looking at building control submission stage or the planning application stage, because a lot of planning applications are not carried through.
Could you just speak up?
I think the point was that I said whether file with a planning application, and the point was a good one, which managers, well, sometimes people don't start for a couple of years. So yes, I mean, there would have to be ideally the photograph should come in before the work is done, and that is the point where you and Stephen were having a slight misunderstanding, because the issue is the person came along on that occasion at the point when the building work was about to start. It doesn't mean that putting it in with the planning application wouldn't be, in my view, sensible, because if in the intervening time damage had been done by the imaginary person with sledgehammers, then before the work started, the person might want to file another photograph to show that was a state of the pavement.
Okay, so can we move on to question 7, please, which is going to be submitted by Prudy Manel.
We're seeing a sharp increase in the paving over of front gardens and the removal of front garden boundaries into conservation areas. This is beginning to alter the character and the appearance of the conservation areas. What can be done to ensure that these roads with attractive front gardens do not become an expansive paving?
Thank you, Prudy, for that. And I shall ask Councillor Chapman to respond.
Thank you very much. This is actually something I feel very strongly about personally. I live in a road where, when we moved in 17 years ago, I should think 90% of the houses had front gardens. And I actually, because I knew I was going to be answering this question, I went around and had a look, and I should think we've probably got about 10 or 15% left. And there's a number of issues here. Firstly, there's the issue of how it looks, which is obviously hugely important. The second, I'm sorry? Oh, I really can't, I'm afraid. Is this all right? Can you hear me now? I do apologise for being like this. Hang on a minute, Peter. There we go, okay. Well done. Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me now? Right, okay. As I was saying, this is something that matters to me very much. And I've seen the change in my road over 17 years, from 90% gardens to about 10-15%. And that's affected not only the way that the road looks, and I have to say I don't live in a conservation area, but it also affects the way in which the water drains. Now we do of course have controls if you're in a conservation area, and if you have something that's called an Article 4, which is a technical word for basically taking away permitted development rights for a number of things. It can be windows and so on, but importantly, it's also for not allowing you to take away your garden, your front garden, and indeed putting a crossover. Unfortunately, there is still, if you like, a little loophole in that people can make those changes, even in a conservation area, where they put in something that's porous, by which we mean gravel or something like that. Now, that will take away the second problem, supposedly, although I've seen it not happen in my road, where we do still have the drainage of the water. But what it doesn't do is keep the character of the road. And that's very much what part of this village process is about. It's to make sure that you tell us how you want to see your road going forward. And if it is something that's hugely important to you, and only you know your road, then that's something that we will very strongly look at. And I'm absolutely committed to anybody that wants to put their road, and the majority of you want to have that kind of thing protected. We will work with officers to make sure that happens. What we can't do is deal with something that comes up to planning now, where that doesn't exist. So this is where it's really important that you tell us what you want for your roads. And I promise you that I think everybody probably sitting here feels as strongly about that as you do, that if you want your gardens kept and you want that as a feature of your road, it's something that's very important to you, so it's very important to us.
Thank you. Would you like to ask a supplementary?
Well, I was just going to say, is there any way of preventing you doing it before you do it?
Well, if you're in a conservation area and that's part of the designation, or if there is an Article 4 direction, then yes, absolutely. If not, as in my road, and I'm afraid not, it's one of those things that you would hope that people would want to preserve the character, but unfortunately the need for parking in many parts of the borough, including where I live in Twickenham, is such that people would prefer to have a car park outside their house. Now, I don't like that myself, but unfortunately, unless it is in an area where that's protected, we can't do anything, I'm afraid.
Gentlemen to the
Yes, I mean, I live in the street here, Sheen Avenue, which is a conservation area. And you have admirable guidelines, which I think the council issued some years ago, which draws attention to the damage that can be done to the character of a conservation area by paving over front gardens. And I think, you know, when we've had, my wife has had correspondence with the council on this, I think, but I get the impression that that's an admirable objective, but actually you lack the power to do anything about it. And of course, we can complain, but we only complain obviously when we see the damage that's been done. And by that time, it seems to be too late. But when we raise this issue, we're told, well, there's nothing we can do with it now. And I just wondered whether you could give some more teeth in some way to the conservation area designation when it does refer to the need to protect front gardens.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I was saying before. This comes back to the Article 4 direction. And where there are areas where we, or the people that live there more importantly, see that this is something that is a key characteristic of the area, we can work towards putting in an Article 4 direction. Now, as you can imagine, with anything that's legal, it takes a while. And we also have to be careful that we can justify it, because with an Article 4 direction, we do have to take regard to the planning inspection, we do have to go through a process. But it is certainly something that we would consider. And I understand on this road that there is an Article 4 on part of the road, and that we would need to look to work towards putting it in.
It's in the process. The consultation's been done and in the process.
Did you hear that? The consultation has been done. We're in the process of bringing one in. That, I'm afraid, isn't going to stop things that have happened in the past, but will stop things that happen in the future. But if you ever see anything on any planning grounds which you think shouldn't have been done, please tell us about it, because we can enforce if something hasn't been built in accordance with the planning permission given, and that's something that I feel very strongly that we must do.
Do you have any idea how long this process would take?
No, I'm not sure. I'm in fact trying to check up today. All I've been told, the officer responsible wasn't actually in the office today, but it should be, it's going out. The consultants have agreed, so have produced the evidence that we have to have. That's all been done, and it's just a question now that there has to be a consultation amongst the residents, and that's sort of in the process of being done or being started to be done now. So as soon as possible, I will be following up with it to get it done ASAP.
Just to say that it's not working, that when the upper part of Sheen Avenue was left out of the designation in 2002, could it be checked whether there was a consultation then of the entire road? And if that was the case, then there doesn't need to be another one now. And it can go through much faster.
I can't answer whether it did or didn't, but we can certainly check it, and we'll take your details and get back to you absolutely.
And make it much faster.
Yeah, no problem. We'll do whatever we can to speed this up and do it as quickly as possible, I can assure you.
I think that's a brilliant idea, actually, of Nikki's. And actually, since Nikki spoke, I don't know how many of you know Nikki, but she is the Hawkeye spokesperson for Mortlake Sheen Society, and has on planning over many years, and is one of the stoutest defenders of the character of Sheen, and I'd like to pay tribute to her and the work that MES does in that respect. Sheen Avenue is terribly important. You might not think that somebody living in Pelwell Park thinks that, but I do, as a matter of fact. And it's our most beautiful conservation area, and it should be protected. The trouble is that this Article 4 stuff is just like any other government regulation that's sort of got to do since Section 143 or something. I don't know what section it is, but it says there are always so many months that you have to go through. We're also dealing at the moment, and this village planning is really about trying to counter this trend. I think that we've got planning all wrong in this country, and people would actually accept development more readily if they thought that the character of their areas was being protected and considered. What they don't like is horrendous stuff which is not in keeping with what's next door being put in. But the government and all parties are desperate to get more housing in London. There is a strategy to raise the population of London to at least 11 million and on the upper range toward over 12 million over the next few years. As far as I'm aware, and I'm not getting into immigration policy, but as far as I'm aware, there's no consent that's ever been asked from the public that they wish London to be expanded to that degree within the existing boundaries. But that is what we are confronted with, and so therefore all the pressure coming from the top is on councils to let things through, to cram more in, to turn a blind eye. And I take the view that we can't do that, and we're not elected to do that. So in this village planning, one of the purposes is to try, as I said at the start, to build up these defences. So if there are roads which you would like to have one of these Article 4s put in to protect against this particular issue or problem, then please, over these next few weeks, come forward and identify those. The final thing I would say about crossovers, and this is a philosophical thing really, it seems to me that we have to live together. If we have one good communities, we have to live together, cheek by jowl, and there has to be give and take. And that sometimes means somebody else parks on your front. Or we brought up 3 children, sometimes you have to walk a few yards down the road, maybe 100 yards. What happens when somebody asks for a crossover and they have a right to do so, and councils are limited on how much they can charge for it, is they're privatising that bit of public space. Where that crossover is put in is a piece of space which no one ever again can use without the permission of that householder, which previously was community space. You could argue that ought to be a taxable good, and therefore you should have to pay for the use of that. But I'm not rash enough to be advancing that. I probably have every elector around my head proposing a new tax. I think we've got too many taxes. But I think we do have to be a bit more considerate about each other. And is it so big a thing that you have to park your car 50 yards away? I think that the community is beginning to say, let's share the road space a little bit more, let's be a bit more tolerant. And if that's what's coming from you, we will bring those defences in if that's supported in the village plan.
Okay, well, that concludes the questions preset. I would like to open it to the floor and hear from anyone who has a question for the panel.
Thank you. Can I ask a question about speed of vehicles within Sheen in 2 veins? Firstly, along the South Circular, which I appreciate is controlled by TfL, but obviously goes through an area which you have influence. And secondly, residential areas. Through the South Circular, my concern is the speed of commercial vehicles and the way that that takes precedence over the residents. Getting over crossings, the fact that a lot of vehicles don't actually stop at zebra crossings, or the first 1 or 2 cars after you go through, and trying to get children to and fro across that. So this is our space. We know that it's an area where you've got a key artery, it's not a TfL control, but it is our village. And if we were a village in the countryside, you'd have pinch points on the way into the village, and you'd have speed cameras, and you'd have rumble strips, and all that kind of things. So what do we get in that? My second point is on residential areas. There's a lot of quite tight residential pockets of roads, which we referred to earlier, where actually the appropriate speed is 20 miles an hour, and I know we can make an application if we want to, and we can get support for 20 miles an hour. A lot of people haven't got the time to try and drive that as a campaign, and I wonder what support the council might offer if there was support from others to actually drive that in some of those residential areas, just to calm down roads. I live just off St Leonard's Road, and that, for example, is quite a rapid line, and cars go very quickly down there, and it is full of families in that area.
Okay, Councillor speak or respond?
As you say, the South Circular is going to be problematic simply because it is TfL, and they at the moment want to keep their roads at 30 miles an hour, so unlikely to see any changes on that score. If people are going or not stopping at zebra crossings and basically breaking the law, there is a law in place to deal with that, and that's an enforcement matter, that's a police matter. I actually started a dialogue with the borough commander from the point of view of trying to ensure that there is better enforcement of cars that are running lights and bicycles running lights as well. So that is something that's on its way. In terms of residential, and the observation I'd make is that if you've got tight roads and congested parking and it keeps the speeds down, then my view would be you don't actually need a 20-mile-an-hour sign. Why introduce the clutter into the road if the speeds are already down at 20 miles an hour? And that's actually quite an important consideration when people say they want to sort of free up, remove parking in order to enable cars to progress. Then obviously cars can progress faster. So in a sense, your parked cars act as a bit of traffic calming. Well, the other thing I'd say is that with respect to 20 miles an hour, if there is demand for it, then yes, we say we will look at it, but we want to see a majority of people wanting 20 miles an hour in a particular area. And one of the things that we're going to do with the village planning process is to basically ask people whether they think that lower speed might be appropriate. So through that village planning process, there will be an opportunity.
Yeah, so,
Just firstly, with regard to the 20 mile an hour zones, what I'm referring to is not the vehicles restricting the speed, I'm talking about the vehicles restricting safe viewing for people crossing roads and things like that. So the vehicles are very careful of driving fast, and I'm saying it's inappropriate for them to be driving back to that speed. So that would be my first concern. And I'd be interested to know if people cared whether we show of hands how many people would actually support a 20 mile an hour zone on some of the residential roads off the main roads. Because I think actually you'd find a lot of people would support that. If they don't, that's fine. I'll keep quiet. But I think you'd find actually if you ask people in the area, there's an awful lot of families in this area, so we all know the nature of it. I think you'd find that most people would like traffic calmer rather than more enabled in those quieter roads. Just back on the main roads, I know that the school where my children have been at have recently on a campaign to try and change the nature of the crossing by Holy Trinity School, and that is within the council's control, and that has had support from Zach Goldsmith, and I know that has been successful, and exactly the same issue exists on all the other crossings that are under TfL's control. In fact, it's under their control. It doesn't obviate our responsibility to point that out and to try and do something about it, bearing in mind it's the village we live in and our children across those roads.
I'm glad you mentioned the crossing. That particular crossing across Sheen Road, and Zach came to me with it, and that's something that together with Cameron Fleming, we pushed it through. The consultation's open at the moment on that, and I would encourage anyone who hasn't done so to please respond to it. The idea is that will get converted into a traffic light controlled crossing during the Easter holidays next year, assuming there's the support. So yes, I mean, we do take action when we can see there is a problem on the point of visibility at junctions. Then we're certainly in a position where we can paint double yellow lines around them if needs be, if there's a safety issue there that's preventing good visibility. On the final point, I'd be very interested in a show of hands on those who would be in favour of 20 mile an hour. And those against?
So that's a clear majority in favour. Can I just ask, just independently, are you talking about 20 miles an hour primarily on the roads off the Upper Richmond Road, or are you talking about the main thoroughfare?
No, I'm not talking about the main thoroughfare. I mean, you've got, whilst I'd like the South Circular to be 20 miles an hour, frankly, that's never going to happen, but I would like 30 miles an hour preserved. I would like people stopping at crossings, and I would like something within the pavements we talked about, the the Mile Cross, and you were saying through to Clifford Avenue, they're looking at the streetscape through there. Something that can't, I think, would be helpful there. But no, not 30 miles an hour, not on other roads. I'm talking about side roads, and huge numbers of side roads there are in quite clearly predominantly residential areas where there's no thoroughfare, it's just people going home to their homes.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else have any other question on transport-related issues?
Yeah, so the 205 is a thoroughfare, and I think it's going to be that way for a very long time. But there are things you could do to make people realise when they're driving through that it is actually a community where people live. And so my question is, what will the council do to lobby TfL to do things like that? Controlling speeds at 30 miles an hour, adding extra crossings, and particularly, it's a very wide road. I think segregated cycling on that route through the shopping area of Sheen would encourage local people, really put the priority of the road back into local people's hands, allowing people to pass through, but making them realise that they're passing through a community and not along it.
Okay.
Thank
you. Can we have another question, please? There's a gentleman in fact with his hand up at the back. I do beg your pardon.
That's right. I live on Sheen Lane. I don't know if my question got asked before we arrived, but my concern is speed. We've been having, I've lived here for 14 years, I have seen a complete change in the area. People come out of the park at 20 miles an hour and they go immediately into huge speed. When I take my dogs for a walk in the morning, I often have to help women with their prams and their buggies to cross the road to protect them and their children. And in relation to the man who's dealing with the traffic, yes, you have marvellous men on bicycles coming to help us about the parking, but they cannot implement anything when the vans are parked on the side of the road because there's no lines there to stop them. So effectively, they're not allowed to issue tickets because there are no lines on crossovers close to my house and opposite. Brian Marshall knows the problems we're having. It is so bad, I can't even get my father out of the car some days when he comes for respite because it's so dangerous. And quite frankly, it's appalling. You have lots of things that you say you will help with. I've had a year, my husband and I have had a year of hell living in Sheen Lane. And yes, the environment's helped a bit, parking's helped a small bit, but in truth, you can't implement the things you're doing. You're disillusioned by the fact that you feel that you have those things in place because you don't deal with them. But if you want this to be a village, we have to slow the traffic down, we have to make it a residential area, which is what it is. From the park to East Sheen High Street, there are no shops, let's respect the residents. And when you talk about parking, it's not the residents that are the problem, it's the commuters, the shops, and then being allowed to park their vehicles. How many commercial vehicles do people have in their streets, which stop residents parking, which in turn causes people wanting to have off-street parking so that they can at least bring their shopping close to their home. That's what I want to say.
Well, of course, what you say, and I'm sorry if you think we're living in a land of illusion. We're actually living in a land of very difficult choices. There are too many cars for the roads that were built in Sheen. Those cars, some of them, yes, come from outside. Many of them belong to us. I'm actually not a car owner myself, although I admit my wife has a car. I know of people who own 5 cars in Sheen. Some of you may know more. We have, as a community, to try and address this. I understand your particular concerns, and I know that you're in touch with Brian. The reality is, if somebody is parking across the drive, the man on the bike can come. If a car is parked inconsiderately, as you feel, in a road where it's legal to park, and it's not illegal, then yes, that man can't do anything about it. The only way to deal with that is to have a blanket ban on parking. Every ban on parking you introduce, if it's a danger issue, that is not going to be somebody who's going to be replaced by residents parking. makes the parking problems worse. So it's a question of balance. Now, maybe you've got the balance wrong. I totally agree with you about people speeding when they come out of the Royal Park. They've been driving at 20 miles an hour for a long time. They come along and they see a great wide road called Sheen Lane and they put their foot down. It's not acceptable. And it'd be nice to have a bit of enforcement. The problem with 20 mile an hour and 30 mile an hour enforcement in residential roads is the police won't do it. It's not a priority for them. They will, and we have got them to enforce on occasion at the Sheen Moor Lake level crossing. We're getting a camera putting in on White Hart Lane, I hope soon, and getting some enforcement there. But it's simply not a priority for the police to charge around with speed guns in residential roads in London. And so we can look at traffic calming measures. This is what the village plan hopefully will enable people to come forward with ideas for that. Every one of those costs a great deal of money, and therefore it's a matter not of the absolute, but of the choices we make as a community. So I do have sympathy. I don't drive. I very rarely drive. It's not true to say I don't drive. Sometimes I do borrow my wife's car, not very often, because usually sometimes I have use for it. But I don't like seeing drivers being inconsiderate. But and we certainly would have to consider 20 mile an hour anywhere. But if it's an illusion to imagine that, Mr. Policeman is going to come along and actually enforce that. At the end of the day, good behaviour has to come from us. So we will consider all the ideas that you put forward, and specifically in terms of Sheen Lane, I know you're in touch with Brian. The South Circular Road is obviously, it's a disgrace that our village high street is a motorway. I agree with the gentleman who said we need to try and find ways to remind people that they're coming into a village. Once upon a time, actually, it was red, the road, funnily enough, which at least made it seem different when it went through Sheen, but they took that away. But all these things we have to negotiate with TfL. As a matter of fact, I suggested, I think in 1987, first of all, when I was a councillor, that crossing by Holy Trinity should be, and the Our Lady Queen of Peace should be made traffic light controlled, and TfL, their then equivalent, didn't want to know, and no she did. So full credit to you, sir, and the community and our colleagues who actually got that moving. We can do things, we mustn't despair. Yes, we're hopeless. Yes, we fail to do some things, and we can't please people all the time. And I do take very seriously when somebody is concerned and worried. Let us have this dialogue, let's put all the ideas on the table and see what we can do. And if we can pull some great ideas for making the South Circular Road better for our village and our shops, let's get out of this plan. One last thing I will say is this. People don't like commercial vehicles parking, and it's very annoying when white van man comes and parks, he sometimes does outside my house. Other people have been saying earlier how vital it is to have our shops. Many of the people who actually work in our shops actually can't afford to live in Sheen, and they do come from places where public transport's not always as good as it can be. A lot of them, a surprising number of people, and this came out in the row over the closure of the Sheen Gate and Richmond Park, actually come across from the other side of the park to work in Sheen. We should try to discourage them. But let's remember that, our shopkeepers, we can't have shops without some degree of commercial activity. So it's a degree of balance and a degree of understanding. We will listen to your concerns, you and everybody else what you say, and we will try and find a balance. That's our job. So that's what this dialogue is about.
Okay, thanks very much.
Can I just say one more thing?
Yeah.
I respect what you're saying. However, Richmond Park Road has a number of companies in issue that use it as a parking lot. Effectively, they come in their normal vehicle, they park their commercial vehicle during the night time, and then they come back during the day, leave their vehicle, and then take the commercial vehicle away. And that happens to 2 or 3 with one electrical
Well, I think that given the parking overnight and the white van man I was referring to, who sometimes very kindly puts it on my front, perhaps he knows I don't have a car, but it is an issue, I agree. But the way that traffic law works in this country is you can't have, we'll do that for that person and that class of people. You've got to come down with a controlled zone, and then that has a knock-on effect. Its controlled zones not being supported by the majority in Sheen in parts of it. Controlled zones actually lose road space. They impose a charge on people who don't, at the moment, have to pay a charge. They bring signs, they bring wardens. We do have a controlled zone on part of Sheen, as you know, between the South Circular Road and the railway. Some people like it, some people don't. So it's not something one rules out ideologically, but I don't think it's an absolute end-all. But people have to behave responsibly. One of the big problems I have at the moment as a local councillor is the detestably selfish behaviour, I don't mind naming the business, of the motorcycle business that does its repair work on Thornton Road. I don't know if any of you know Thornton Road, anybody from Thornton Road here. But there is a motorbike business that acquired what used to be the printers in Thornton Road, and they use that as a repair shop, and they park their motorbikes sometimes up to 15 a day in the road legally, because you can park a motorbike even in a controlled parking zone. So even a controlled parking zone is not an answer to that. I've been with them, pleading with them twice. These are the problems we have to, we will find a way of dealing with them, but the commercial, we have to negotiate often with the commercial people, and that's what it is.
Okay, I think we've talked quite a lot about the traffic problems in the borough. Can we invite anyone else to talk about another subject, please? Can we bring the microphone up to the front here?
Hello, and I'm speaking not only as a local resident, but as the chair of the Friends of Barnes Hospital. Many people here probably don't realise that Barnes Hospital has served this community for 125 years, and it's been an NHS resource since 1948. But because of the way that health services have been restructured, in 2001 it was given at no cost to a mental health trust. They now want to sell the whole site, and they will use the proceeds from the sale of that site to build new mental health hospitals at Tooting and Tolworth, not exactly where many of our Richmond patients can go to. Now, very recently, the Director of Adult Social Care and Housing, Kathy Kerr, described the Barnes site as the jewel in the crown in the borough of Richmond, because along with the brewery site, it's the only large space which is available in the whole of Richmond for any sort of community development. I do hope that you'll try and keep a bit of that jewel in the crown. And I know that you're not decision makers, but you do have influence. And I would ask that you can try and influence to make part of the site be retained as an NHS resource. And I'm sure many heard Simon Stevens this morning talking about the development of community services rather than acute services. That at least some of the proceeds from the sale will be used to benefit the borough and the patients and the local community. That as also developments on the site, that you try and influence at low cost or no cost space for the voluntary sector who desperately needs space to support many of the social and NHS services. And that also, finally, any planning decisions will take into account maximising the retention or improvement of the beautiful green space and gardens that are on the Barnes Hospital site. Most people are not aware. They see the wall and think it's dreadful and falling apart, but behind that there is some lovely space.
Okay, thank you. I don't know who in the panel would like to respond to that.
Not too much from me. I can respond. Do you want to say anything further, or just
No, I think I don't want to respond.
Okay, well, it is firstly, I mean, what you do and friends, thank you for everything on that. It is an important resource. We have had a number of meetings with various industry, and I assure you the Council is taking an interest and will try to use what leverage we can with the Mental Health Trust, and we obviously do have planning powers there. There are a large number of ideas coming forward. Not in the gardens, actually, I think some of the buildings have particular merit as well and should be preserved. We have said that we'd like to see some continuing extra care provision, for example, which would carry the spirit of the site forward, at least in terms of older people. There are aspirations for some for a small school provision on site. It couldn't be more than one form. It's a very difficult site in terms of access, as you know. The South Local Way is very, very difficult. There would have to be some enabling development, but we will want to keep that to a minimum if we can. I think a couple of the other ideas that you put forward, which would have been captured on tape, I think the ones that I'll make sure are brought forward in discussions, because officers are giving consideration to this at the moment, so what you said is very timely. And certainly the Council will not let it just be another anonymous housing estate with no facilities for the community. I can assure you for that.
Okay, thank you. Whilst talking, are there any people in the audience who'd like to address any educational matters? We have one speaker who would love to say something. Over in the back.
Yes, hello. I think this relates not just to education but also to community development, which traffic was now advanced. It does seem that we have a population, an emerging population at large. That there are a lot of people here in the hall tonight who've got grandchildren emerging, immigrants that have children. This seems to be a serious problem, and there is a huge pressure on primary schools at the moment. What we've seen happen just in recent months is the conversion of Vernon Hall into a new private school. But that could have been done without community facilities in Vernon Hall disappearing. So I think we've got a problem here. There's a lack of community. There are community facilities, but maybe not enough for the emerging population. That might also be true of medical facilities in Sheen Centre. Are we sure we've got enough space for that in the future? Is this something that the Council is aware of? And do they have plans about it that are going there?
Okay, thank you for that question.
So part of that is certainly to be, part of it is about planning. I can tell you I'm absolutely aware of that issue. It is probably the highest priority that I've got in my job, to make sure that we've got enough primary places. And Councillor Drew talked earlier about finding balances and compromises and making choices. And we, as a council, absolutely have to do that in all of the uses that we have. But we do have discretion. And it's, perhaps in my position, terrifies me when I hear numbers of the population of London going up to 11 million, because these kinds of things are very difficult. We don't have large open spaces readily available without completely transforming the character of our area. So absolutely we are aware of it. We take long-term views of school-place planning. We've introduced a 10-year plan. We are constantly looking for sites and appropriate sites for schools, and this bulge will also come up to secondary. So it is an issue. I don't have a magic wand solution in many cases. We're having to be creative. Thompson House School, that some of you may know, is split over a couple of sites. And they have to make sacrifices in terms of the play area that they've got. But it's still an excellent school. And you can still have outstanding schools in these areas which we need to ensure. But in this area in particular, it is very difficult. And we heard about the Barnes Hospital site. We need to look at as these sites come up, opportunities for more school places. So it is an incredibly important issue, and as I say, one that we are daily considering and planning long term.
Okay.
Can I just address briefly the community point, because it's a fundamental one actually for modern society, and I think it's a bit what this is about. This, by the way, is a wonderful community facility. It's rather more than that, but it is a wonderful community facility. One of my many beefs with the coalition government's planning policies, although unfortunately supported in this by the other parties, is this letting people convert offices, convert places into residential without requiring any community benefit in return. This is a major problem, not just for this council, but for most councils in London, actually. We're threatening to lose about 50,000 square metres, I think it is, of council of office accommodation. We'll get nothing under the government rules back for schools, for roads, for community facilities. This is something you're quite right, sir, to address this issue to us. We do need to think about that. But we do need to, without going back to my rather lengthy remarks earlier, we are a community. One of the big problems this council wants to address is the widespread problem of loneliness. And you don't only address that by building new community facilities. You do that by building community links, the work that Fish does and other bodies of this sort. They're vitally important. And actually, it's a pity that what the Prime Minister said about the big society became just a soundbite. I hope it was more than a soundbite before it came out in the first place. But actually it was something rather important. And so if we're going to have a successful future, we have to make the whole place a community hall, as it were. And this, I hope, is a small contribution to that, this dialogue we want to have inside the community.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Now, would anyone else like to ask another question? Lady here.
Hello. I agree with the lady who spoke about the number of estate agents in our area, and I know that where I work in Barnes, that actually the town centre manager they have did help to stop an estate agent. I'm wondering, is it something that we could actually have, a town centre manager, would that be like an idea? Talking about community links, I actually run Fish, and actually linking businesses with voluntary sector and actually making our community much more dementia friendly, for example, and actually helping to, the business, how our commercial road, we have Broughton Road, works with the communities. I do think sometimes they're very separate, and perhaps a community town centre manager could that be an answer?
Okay, thank you. If I can ask Pamela.
Thank you very much. Well, we do actually have from the Town Centre Opportunities Fund, in East Sheen has an allocation, and it goes to the East Sheen Mortlake Business Association. And I think in their case, they didn't use it to contribute to a town centre manager, although we do have a representative who comes to the borough meetings of the Business and Retail Association. Jackie Upton actually comes to those. And we make a contribution to Barnes that they choose to put towards a town centre manager. So it's really up to the individual areas. I know that the East Sheen Business and Mortlake Society, I think they've got a very good village website, which businesses have the opportunity to promote themselves on. Yes, on the estate agents, Emma Robinson's done a great job on trying to find up estate agents in Barnes. I think you might, the Barnes and here, you're probably relieved to hear that I've been told that in the next sort of 10 years there won't be any high street estate agents because everybody will be doing it online. It is something that we'd be very happy to discuss with Jackie and with the Trades Association, but it's really up to you and up to them. And that whole village planning exercise isn't just about the planning aspect. We want businesses to contribute to this as well. And if this comes up as a priority, I'm sure it's something that we discussed.
Sorry, can I just add about the voluntary sector, because obviously that's a part of my function, is that we have something called the Voluntary Sector Forum, and any of you who have been involved in the voluntary sector may have come to that. And we do very much push the village plans there and ask anyone in the voluntary sector to get involved. And if we can get businesses to work with the voluntary sector, so much the better. And in terms of, you mentioned dementia, we had a reception only a month or so ago where we actually invited businesses who are part of our Dementia Alliance to meet with the voluntary sector organisations to really instil that sense of involving businesses and making them understand what it's like, not just for those who have dementia, but as importantly for those who care for those with dementia, because it's the simple things like making sure that the person is comfortable within your shop or your business, understanding the limitations of those who have dementia, because I think one of the key things that this council wants to do is to make sure that as far as we can, we increase the availability of our services and of the community in general for those who suffer from loneliness, because it's obviously something that's going to become more of a problem as we all get older. Some of us are unfortunately going to be lonely, and that's something that we want to stop. So any of you who are involved in the voluntary sector, please, please, please get involved in this village plan, because we want to hear from you.
We were one of the first boroughs to become a dementia-friendly borough, I would say, and I have a profound personal reasons for wishing us to keep dementia very much at the heart of what we do, so I can assure you all that.
Yes, no, I am absolutely aware of that, and I do, applaud you for that. And I think actually Sheen was way ahead of, we think, 50 years ago when the Foundation of Fish. Now it's very much on a political agenda. We've been supporting lonely and combating loneliness for all those years. So that's fantastic, and that's with the community here, many people sitting around. What my point is, it's great to have all these different forums, but actually a one-point person who the community that people sitting here could come to if they have, to link with, would be very helpful, possibly.
Yes, one of them, as part of the whole village planning exercise, we have a community links officer, and I thought Lynette was actually here tonight. Yes. And that is the point of contact. And Lynette, I mean, it's also very helpful if people have ideas, taking ideas forward. Lynette's the person to contact, to put in contact with the right person. So yes, Lynette, please make yourself known.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have another question to ask?
Hi, I'm just interested, because earlier you said that you're vigorously protecting the shop frontages on Upper Richmond Road, which seems a bit bizarre, because there's been a few shops that come through this little loop and are very attractive. For example, the tanning shop, which is just popped up on Sheen Lane, which grows. You can see it from far away. I'm just wondering, how do you protect against this? Is there an application that you should be reviewing to make sure that it adheres to certain styles? I know that other high streets in the rest of London, maybe in Chelsea, they're much more stricter with shop frontages and actually brings up the whole area. And maybe we'd be getting more shops and independent shops trying to come in and join us because it looks like an attractive high street. But at the moment, it is a bit tired, high street.
Well, we do have, we are quite strict on shopfront guidance, and I would have thought that if you're talking about particular shops, our planning restrictions on shop fronts are usually you know, quite strictly observed, in fact. So if you're talking about one that you don't think is compliant, then it can certainly be reported, and we can ask our enforcement officers to, we can ask an officer.
It's not just one, there's a couple I can think of, which are vast, you know, are very, very sort of vulgar colours. And I'm sure everyone knows what these shots are. But how do they get through? Because if you say you have a strong well, how much you have to get through this?
Well, it may, people frequently, unfortunately, people take over a shop. And not always, the agents or the commercial agents doesn't always, although it is, we have regular meetings, I mentioned earlier, with commercial agents, and one of the things we have actually mentioned to them is that when they let a shop, they should, at the same time, give people a copy or refer them to the link on shopfront guidance. Now, colours, there isn't a great deal of control over colours.
Which seems a bit strange, doesn't it, when colours are a big issue in a high street?
Well, it's a point. If you were looking at specific shops, then I think, you know, it's something we can ask officers to have a look at. So if you'd like to see them, we can ask those particular shops. But frequently, I mean, what happens is that if you take over a shop, I mean, we can't inspect every single shop. You can't have an officer walking around inspecting every single shop. We've just got too many. And we do, to a certain extent, rely on local people and local businesses themselves getting in touch or speaking to the shops themselves, shop owners and shop owners themselves, and the agents. But if in this particular case you think they are totally out of character in the area, we can certainly have them looked at. Yeah, indeed, yeah.
I think it is important. I mean, because obviously a collective makes the whole look good. We have very strong design guidelines. There are issues about enforcing them. I do come forward with specific points to Pamela. I think that we have in some other areas actually given small grants to shops to know to reinstate to a high quality. There's danger in terms of the perverse incentive. Someone paints it really horrible and says, well, give me a grant to make it something else. But the point you make is very important. And I think in this village plan process, again, if we can get the shopkeepers to agree this is how we would like to have Sheen, then maybe the council can help do that. A long time ago, when I first came to live in Sheen, all the shops in that sort of 1930s stretch between Sheen Lane going along towards, Penryn and beyond, they had the same brass lettering, it actually looked rather good, and then it's all gone. I mean, maybe some people might like
in Chelsea do that. I don't know why our high street can't do something more.
Well, I think, let's see if in this process, working out the plan together, we can put that in our plan. I think it's good.
Can I just add that these particular shops have actually painted their shop fronts with a brush. So it's not an expensive sort of decoration, is it? Really?
No, we can certainly look at that. And as Lord Truth says, we can look at it as part of the village planning process. And in fact, in the Kew supplementary planning document, because as you know, there have been two pilot projects, Kew and Whitman Heathfield. In both of those, we do incorporate a section on shopfront guidance, because certainly this was something that came up in both areas. So I'm sure we would want to do the same. Well, we would, but maybe you would want, it's to come from you. You want to do the same for Sheen, for a Sheen. So this is the sort of the important thing, is to come to one of the consultation drop-in event if you can, and speak to the consultants, or go on the walkabout, or of course you've got the online consultation to contribute. But in the meantime, about those two shops, we can get those looked at.
I'll put it in applied. Let's do it in Sheen. I mean, we did discourage, council is tries to discourage those shutters that come down, you get covered with graffiti. They were coming down a lot a few years ago, and we have tried to persuade shops not to do that. We actually stopped Waitrose masking out their windows. It's like, I think Richmond Waitrose, for example, is a disaster because it just makes that street look dark. It's got all the shelving against it. the one in Sheen is actually bright and open because we require them to keep it that way as a planning condition. So there are things you can do, and we will be prepared to look at them.
Thank you.
Okay, the lady in the front here, I know, had her hand up to ask a question. You've been very patient, thank you very much.
Well, I'm interested in the village scene, of course. Mortlake Sheen Society, which I've been associated for many years, has had this as its core, it's the thrust of its activities. We don't Redmond and all the rest of it. Now, for years, the last few years especially, we worked to make the center, Sheen Center, as one of the focus points in the community, because there are no others in that sense. Because of a change somehow in the structure of authority in the library, especially in the last few years, many of the activities which were coming from the residents of Sheen, book readings, play readings, poetry societies, and so on and so forth, have been canceled. And it seems to me that it has to do with new authority and ability to have these things. Most of these, of course, were taking place at night. But we had what we thought was a vibrant cultural center. All these activities, variety of activities, and they have been stopped. I wonder if there's anything that we can do to reintroduce this sense. That center is very important to us for many reasons, and have it more active in the evenings as we have in the weekends and so on and so forth. I wonder if there's anything that we can do.
Thank you. I don't know who on the panel would like to support.
Well, yes, I was going to give you the library point because, I mean, generally we're finding our libraries are running more activities than ever. So I'm very disappointed to hear you say that this, you know, you've seen a decrease in activities. We can certainly. Yeah.
Nature.
Well,
Because the community, it was from the community and of the community, which is what you're talking about.
Yes.
And it seems to me that it was wiped out.
Yeah. Yes.
Lady is saying that activities have been wiped out in the library.
Well, I mean, I will certainly talk to, we talked to our officers. I'll also talk to my colleague, cabinet member, Nina Bond, who looks after libraries. I did have libraries in my portfolio on the side. And I was very surprised to hear that. Because it isn't the feedback that I've had up till now from people. I thought that the library was very much a hub of activity for people. So all I can say is I'm sorry to hear what you say. And I will take that particular point back, indeed.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you very much. I think the gentleman there in red.
Yes, I mean, I have another experience. I know the one that's being talked about here in the library, but I'm talking now about the Sheen Lane Centre, the hall, which a lot of us, well, my predecessors, it's a long time ago now, particularly in the North Lake and the Sheen Society, fought very hard to get that centre built as a place where community activities could take place. I'm also on the committee of the Barnes and North Lake History Society, which has always had its meetings in the centre. But it's now found that it has been impossible to book it next year because a business which of a commercial nature really has books it every day. Now, I imagine the services that this organisation provides, its dance classes, I think, are of use to people who live in the community. But it did seem to us, it seemed to me, at any rate, that this is not really what the centre was built for. And as a result, of course, they had to move somewhere else. They're still within the area, and they're now going to use system. But it's the Sheen incentive is built for that kind of an organisation to operate, to provide public lectures and so on.
Okay. Would anyone on the panel like to comment on the gentleman's question?
Well, I certainly comment from I'll have a review of what's going on in the centre. You only have to look at me to see that dance is probably not high on my regular activities. Sorry, I think my wife's just come in and heard that, but she would confirm it. But it is something that some people like to do. It's where keeping fit, it's fun, it gets people together. So I'm not going to be against dance, except don't ask me to. But I am concerned if there is a feeling that the community is being pushed out. When I was first a councillor, the old councillor Gross, who was the councillor of Sheen for a long time, it was his pride and joy to see that place brought together with the support of the community. We'll take away these concerns and have a look at them. And I'm sorry to hear what you say.
Okay, thank you. Gentleman in the blue jacket.
Hi, I think the business referred to earlier, Cafe, was milestones. You're talking about trying to reinvigorate the Sheen Lane Centre. If they've got something that can become on top of them, some space there, help their business and help regenerate that area.
Well, any idea obviously can be put forward and. Yeah, well, absolutely. So it's now on the table, and let's have a look at it. Whether coffee is served from time to time in the Sheen Lane Centre, and often it's served at events and on other occasions by groups. Let's see what I said. We'll go away and have a look at the way the centre is operating at the moment. If there are problems, we'll go in.
Just a general point as well. We talked a lot about money. There's some money available, not all the actual amounts. So you talk about the amount available to the local society and farmers and use that for local plots and help the shops. What sort of amounts are available?
Well, they're budgetary decisions. On the Civic Pride Grant, which is a thing that organisations will get normally up to about £5,000 for a project. Obviously, if there are larger projects, then the council will put in more. We put in the revamping of the Sheen Lane Centre area, for example, and we put in a much larger sum. So it's really horses for courses. We do expect, obviously, to put some money on the table for some of the ideas that come out of the village planning process. I do try to keep council tax down. We have one of the highest council tax in London, which we inherited, and I've tried not to, we haven't put it up. So there is a balance in that too. But we have invested heavily in community matters. We spent a lot more on environmental parks, pavements and roads. We're putting a lot more money into that kind of thing. As we look at the projects that come forward, and often £1,000 can go a long way. Some project might need £200,000, which might not be available immediately.
I'm thinking of a project which was quoted as costing £300,000.
Well, £300,000 depends what the project would be.
Was that work on the road in Pebble Park, I think?
Work on what?
Work on Pebble Park. When the council came back and said budget was £300,000, spend some of the most expensive work for coming years.
Well, the council spends a very great deal on work on roads and pavements around the borough.
Well, how much has been spent on Pebble Park so far?
I don't know the answer to that. It probably is somewhere not far away from what the figure that you give. Now you actually, let me put on the table, the gentleman has said, I have said at this meeting that I live in Pebble Park. The gentleman is saying a lot of money has been spent on Pebble Park. I don't know if it's suggested any connection between the two. I can say if there is a suggestion that's made there's any connection between the two, that suggestion would be completely false. very high regard for standards of public life and probity in public life. The first thing I did when I became leader of the council was cut the pay of the leader of the council, and I would never seek any advantage from my position as leader of the council. I claim no expenses. I don't like beating my breast about this, but I know that there's scuttlebutt around in the community, but I had no personal connection with the decision to improve that road, where the pavements have not been attended to, certainly in all the time I've lived there. Since 1986, decisions taken by others.
That's not the point. The point is...
Well, I forgive you, sir, if that wasn't the point, but I thought since it was left hanging in the air, and I know it's in the air, perfectly reasonable to me to answer it.
No, okay, the point was, if you're able to spend £300,000 on improving one road, £300,000 would go a long way towards addressing some of the issues that have been discussed tonight.
The truth is, we're spending millions across the borough on pavements and roads, and we'll continue doing so because we think it's a priority. And we spend £250,000 on the Sheen Lane improvements. These are types of money that can be made available. Life is not always a zero-sum game. I personally think we should repair pavements. I think every bit of repairing pavement that results in an old person not falling over and breaking a hip is a good thing. I'd rather deal with prevention rather than cure. So the money is available for good projects that come forward.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Does anyone else have one final question to ask before we start? Like that's a no. Can you just wait for the mic?
I'm sort of involved with what's called the housebound library project, in which elderly folk or people who are disabled are brought books. Now, the question I'm asking is what? Maybe there's no answer to this. There was a time when we had about 17 people on our books. I have to be generic. Now it's down to 4. And I just wonder if there's a reason for that. If anyone knows of it, we'd be very keen to know why.
No, I mean, it is normally volunteers who do this. I mean, in fact, I haven't got, because I haven't been looking after libraries, haven't been part of my remit for nearly, a year now. But certainly, volunteers in libraries there was an increase in volunteers in libraries up until then.
They have increased from quite a large number down to 4. In fact, down to 3,000.
Well, yes, I think just maybe that not so that more people maybe even downloading ebooks and then yes, measuring. But I can certainly ask.
Okay, well I think, to quote a rather well-known gentleman, I think our time is up. I'd like to thank you all for coming down to this very informative meeting in Sheen Church, and I'd particularly like to thank all the councillors who've come down and given up so much of their time to answer as many questions as possible. All I will say is, as a resident of Sheen for the last 30-odd years, is that it's been a lovely place to live in, and despite all our problems that we have, as a resident, I'm not at all convinced that I want to move from here, and I'd just like to thank everyone for acting on our behalf and doing the best that they possibly can under sometimes very difficult circumstances, trying to please all of us all of the time. So thank you very much for coming.